Welcome to Living Lit, where conversations spark inspiration to live in truth. Journey together with us to explore what it means to live a liturgical life and walk in the truth of our faith. Let's instill a culture in our hearts, homes, families, and world, living a life cooperating with and walking alongside our Lord. I'm Robyn Brueggemann. Let's be a light, share the light, shine the light, and live lit. Well, friends, I am really looking forward to this episode of Living Lit. I have a really interesting topic that we are going to talk about today, and it is the temperaments. I am just so excited to dive into this topic with you because I think it's really a great topic for us to understand, to help learn more about ourselves and who we are and who God created us to be, but also to learn a lot about those who we do life with. So with me today, I have Rosemary McGuire Berry. She is a lifelong Catholic reader, storyteller, writer, and traveler who homeschools the younger of her two daughters, one of which she has graduated and one has coming up, right?
Yes.
And when she's not leading international pilgrimages with her husband and family to visit shrines and saints, she resides with her family in Colorado. So, Rosemary, thank you so much for being on Living Lit today.
Thank you for having me, Robyn. It's a delight to be here.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to this. Like I said, I've really wanted to know more about the temperaments my whole life, especially as a mom, and they pop in and out of my life of trying to learn them, and they haven't quite sunk in until I started reading your new book, Piety Personality, the Temperaments of the Saints, and things are finally clicking. So I am just super excited to visit with you about this and help others get to know more about the temperaments and just how we can just learn more about ourselves and others. I think it will just be so valuable. So thank you so much for coming on. Will you share a little bit more about yourself?
Yes. So, as you mentioned, I'm blessed to be a lifelong Catholic. I'm a wife and mom. I tell stories of the saints so that we may walk with them both by prayer, by imitation, and by visiting them on pilgrimage so that we can grow closer to the heart of Christ. That's all about what we do is learning the science of the saints, learning to know how they found their way to the path, their own pathway to the heart of Christ, and how we can follow them by finding our own pathway to Christ. We know it's through Holy Mother, the Church, of course, but we each have kind of our own ways. Each saint had some special virtue that they exemplified, or some beautiful habit that they teach us, like the little way of Saint Therese. And so I just love learning and sharing stories of the saints.
Yeah. Do you happen to be having any pilgrimages coming up? As we are recording, we are in the Jubilee year where
Yes.
pilgrimages are taking place a little bit more than they normally do in a year. So do you have any coming up this year?
Yes, I am leading a pilgrimage to Ireland. That one has already booked and full, unfortunately. But people can check out my website and keep up on that because I do love just visiting the saints in all different places, Spain, France, Italy. Led a big one to Italy in 2023, and then we'd already planned this one for Ireland for this year. And maybe France will be next. We'll see.
Oh, what a gift. I bet it really helps the lives of the saints come to life for you when you're visiting their places and their
Absolutely.
countries. And oh, what a gift. That is awesome. So your new book, which we're going to talk some about, but we're really going to dive into what temperaments are so we can have a better understanding about them. But your book is available through TAN Publishing. And like I said, I've just really been enjoying your book. I'm about halfway through, and it's just been a gift that TAN has sent this to me. It's been a gift to just really make some connections about the temperaments. And your book, it's so great because I feel like you can learn so much as a person. Like I'm really like kind of discovering more of, oh, I tend to be that way or do those things. And now I can see in that saint kind of these similarities. And I love how you have studied the saints and brought them into this because they are like the absolute best role models for us, aside, of course, from Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. They're just such fantastic role models that we can have. And so I've really been enjoying like getting to know a little bit more about the saints, but it's really helped me as I'm reading and kind of reflecting and the things that I do know about some of the saints. And I want to make sure people that are listening, if they don't know a lot about the saints, it's okay. You don't need to. You can always dive in and learn more about them. But it's really been helping me as I've been reading to think about the saints and think, oh, yeah, I kind of know their story and I know some of their accomplishments or things they've done or the way they use their life to glorify God or do great things for God. And seeing, what their temperaments would have been like has really been helpful. So I love the way you combined them within all this work that you've done. But how about we back up and talk about now, what are the temperaments and why are they so important?
Yes, so there are a lot of different fads and trends about learning your temperament, learning your personality. What kind of personality are you? What Disney character are you most like? Or what Jane Austen character are you most like? But the one we use here is a very ancient one from Hippocrates. And he came up with this in the 4th century before Christ. He discovered that there were 4 major personality types. We all have some kind of combination of these 4, uh, and we are born with them. So we come out of the womb already with this temperament. It's often 2 temperaments, maybe choleric and sanguine, or sanguine and phlegmatic, or whatever. That's why they have these funny names, is that Hippocrates came up with them so long ago. And there's the choleric, who is the dominant, decisive one, the CEO one, the one that always knows where he or she is going and thinks that everyone else should follow them because they have all the best ideas. As you can tell from the description, they struggle with pride, with a need for domination and power. But on the other side, on the good side, they have all this strength of will and determination, and they really stick to a goal. And once they go, they can really, really go. So, a beautiful example of that would be St. Francis Xavier, who, when you go to Rome, you can see his right arm, the relic of his right arm, and they particularly venerate it because he baptized personally 300,000 souls. That's an example of a choleric. They're just forward, go, go, go kind of people. The second one is the sanguine. The sanguine is the fun-loving one, the pleasant, pleasurable, loves pleasure, but also makes life happier, just more joyful, finds the good in everyone, finds the good in whatever it is they have to do, like let's make it fun, let's turn on the music, or they can be really good salespeople. So again, from the description, you can tell that they have this beautiful gift of joy and optimism, but they have to work on not being shallow, being deeper, taking things deeper, realizing I have to be consistent. I have to put my roots in Christ and not just try to flit around from one devotion to the next or one idea to the next. And we have a beautiful example of a sanguine in St. Peter. St. Peter, the rock that our Lord chose to build his church on, was not very rock-like when he started out. He was kind of wishy-washy and would kind of jump this way and jump that way. And can I jump out of the boat and walk on the water with you? And then he does it. And then a minute later, he's lost his confidence and he starts to sink. Or he says, Lord, I would die for you. I would never deny you. And that night, he's denying our Lord and pretending he never even heard of him. So he shows us a beautiful example of overcoming the weakness of that sanguine, using the joy and the optimism and the enthusiasm to become the rock that our Lord built his church on. Then we have the melancholic. The melancholic is a deep thinker, sensitive, kind of the opposite of the sanguine in a lot of ways, because they think deeply, they feel deeply, they're sensitive, they're empathetic. Uh, as you can tell from the description, they can tend to overthink and they can tend to look at the downside of things too much. And so they have to work on their optimism, work on trust, work on hope. But they have that beautiful depth of spirit and that attention to detail to actually do things correctly and in the right order. They're very orderly people. And we have a beautiful example of a melancholic in Saint Therese of Lisieux, who was very sensitive, very empathetic, deeply loved, and had to struggle with the things that bothered her and the things that tried to discourage her or depress her. And then we have the phlegmatic. And the phlegmatic, somehow we always mention them last because they're not the ones that are dancing on the tables or running the companies most of the time. They are peace-loving, quiet, hard workers. Um, they just have so much to give because they don't have to be fighting with the cholerics or talking over the sanguines or overthinking with the melancholics. Instead, the phlegmatics are just quietly getting the job done. They're laid back, easygoing, very likable. They have to watch out for laziness, though, because they can be so laid back that they don't do anything. So they have to work on laziness, and they have to work on, sometimes they can be quietly stubborn, and they have to make sure that that quiet stubbornness is set for good. And we have a beautiful example of this in St. Thomas More. He was a husband and father, and he was a career man, right? He was an enormously popular and successful statesman in his day, and he had to be quietly stubborn when faced with Henry VIII's lustful path to destroying the church in England. And so St. Thomas More had to use that quiet stubbornness for good and not be lazy, be hardworking, and he shows us a beautiful example of that. So that's a kind of a very quick overview of all four with an example of a saint for each one.
I love that. Yeah, you've done a great job of kind of, I mean, in a very short version of like what you go very, not, I mean, deeply, plenty deep without being overwhelming in your book. It's so fantastic. So, something that had never clicked with me, and I'm sure I heard it years ago, but it just didn't sink in, was that you can be more than one. And I think that's what was getting me hung up for many years. And I would just get kind of frustrated because I was like, well, I don't think I fit into this, or this, just that, like trying to figure out what I am myself. And then when I was reading your book, I finally went, oh my goodness, well, yeah, you can be a couple. Can you be more than two? Or is it just two?
So when you fill out a questionnaire or a quiz about it, you go off your numbers. And
Oh,
I've known people that have come out like even in three or close
wow.
to even in three,
Okay.
and then one is lesser. Sometimes too, it's affected by your surroundings and what you have to do, right? So you might be choleric when you're doing a podcast, but you might be sanguine when you're with your friends. So you might just kind of look at things and say, okay, what is my natural tendency though? Not what I have to do for work or what I have to do to be a mom or what I have to do to be a wife. Whatever it is that is happening around us can make us take on those traits. And that's good and that's normal. And we're supposed to, right? We're supposed to be able to lead the parish meeting if we have to, but maybe that's not our general tendency. So that can make it a little confusing as to, well, which one am I most of the time?
Yeah, no, that's so helpful though. That gives me freedom in my thinking of trying to learn about myself, then to know, okay, I probably am more than one of them. And that helps to understand. And that's really what I've really been enjoying is, I think there's a phrase, right? Like the more we know God, the more we know ourselves, and the more we know ourselves, the more we know God, right? Is that a saint phrase? I feel like it is. I just can't think of it right now. But anyways, I've really been, I feel like just kind of having some more self discovery as I've been reading through your book, which is just really so helpful. So I think that would lead into this next question of, can you give us examples of how this helps us with human interactions with others?
Oh, yes. I think it's vital. How many times have we looked at someone else, whether it's our spouse, our child, our coworker, the lady in the pew next to us at church, and thought, why are they behaving this way? Like, I would never behave that way. I would never blank, blank, blank. Um, it just helps us to understand that they're coming from a different point in their mind. The tendencies that they have are different than ours. So a choleric's tendency is going to be very forceful, very opinionated, just an opinion about everything. A sanguine says, "Oh, it looks like it's going to rain. This will be good for my flowers." And the choleric says, "It's not going to rain. I checked and it's not going to rain." Well, did you have to mention that? Did you have to pour cold water, pardon the pun, on the sanguine's idea? Well, a choleric feels that they have to state the facts, that, this is how it is, and I know more than you do, and I have to tell you that. And of course, when a choleric becomes virtuous, then the choleric says, you know what? Yes, that's true. Yes, it probably isn't going to rain for that little sanguine's flowers, but I don't have to actually bring it up. It's not important. I can save my forceful, opinionated part of my nature for the things that are really important.
Mm-hmm.
For a phlegmatic, an easygoing phlegmatic, have you ever had a friend where you're just like, I don't know. If I call her, then we get together. But if I don't call her, nothing ever happens. I don't know. Maybe she doesn't even want to be my friend. Well, if you ascertain that that person is a phlegmatic, they just they don't care that much about being the initiator. They're perfectly fine with you calling them and you setting up, hey, do you want to go for coffee or do you want to go to adoration together? Because they're just not a pushy kind of go getter kind of person. And I have a couple of really good phlegmatic friends that I realized that with, that if I initiated some kind of get together, they were right there. They were happy to come. They enjoyed being together, but they didn't have to be the one that initiated. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm a sanguine and I do initiate fun things. As long as I know that you're not offended or you're not mad at me or something, then I can understand. So those are just like a couple of little examples, but it comes up everywhere. It comes up in everyone we deal with, whether it's our 2-year-old, whether it's our teenager, whether it's our parish priest. Parish priests have temperaments too, and they can sometimes react in a way. You ask them something, Father, can we do this on Saturday? And the way he responds may have to do with his temperament. He may say, absolutely not. Are you kidding me? We're very busy right now. You might be like, oh my goodness, he's mad at me. No, maybe he's just choleric and he's just stating the fact and he's surprised that you're hurt by that. Like, what? I'm just letting you know that we have too much on the calendar this weekend. I wasn't trying to be mean. What is your problem? Is how he's thinking, you
Yeah.
know? So these are just some random examples, but it just affects everything.
It really does. And I find that so helpful that you're saying that because it feels like it's just lifting off not a burden, that's not the right word, but just how we can overthink someone else's reaction or their comment or their gesture. Um, and we can tend to forget because we're so busy reacting and trying to figure out what that meant or what their intention was behind it that we
Yes.
forget that they're just going with the way they were wired. And I mentioned this to you before we started recording that if I could go back, I think, as parents, we're always going to have these thoughts of, oh, I wish I could have done this, this, and this better. And over the years, I've definitely, when it comes to temperaments, thought, and I've tried to figure them out, but I just was never very successful. And I'm only halfway through parenting and raising 7 of my kiddos. And once I started to learn a little bit about the temperaments, like, I don't know, half of my parenting years ago, my eyes were like, oh, like in my head, I thought I had to parent. Fair to me meant parenting them all exactly the same. And I didn't take into consideration that they had these different temperaments. And that's always been a place when I reflect back on my past parenting years of, oh gosh, I wish I would have known that because I would have reacted so differently if I would have, in certain situations, if I would understand, why they're slower to get their shoes on and out the door, or they're slower to respond maybe with something that's not matching my, like, let's go, 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 let's get out the door. And then, so that's just a silly situation, but it's actually a real one where
Very real.
it just plays into all these little parts of family life. And so I really look back and think, oh, that makes so much more sense now in some of the struggles that we maybe had or difficulties in, even if it's a chore system or something, all these little things that can become big things that I really just wish I would have understood or known more about the personality, or not personality, the temperaments, just that just really play into anywhere. Like you said, it's your friends, it's your family, it's your marriage, it's your workplace, it's the grocery store, it's church, it's everywhere. But it has really shown me, I would say the biggest thing that I've really come away with after diving more into the temperaments and what your resources and research through this has shown is I've walked away really, I think, with this overall feeling of grace. Like, oh my goodness, like when you think more about how we're all just kind of operating for the most part out of the way God created us and the way we're wired to be, and understand that and just kind of remember that, I feel like then we're hopefully able to offer so much more grace to the person on the other end of how they're reacting. And so that's really kind of been this little blessing and gift that has come out of your book where I'm like, oh, of course. And I would hope then that someone would return that to me, in if I react in a way or respond, I should say respond. Respond sounds a little bit better than reactive, right? But hopefully, just more grace, I would say, is what's really been coming to mind. So how has like how long ago did you start getting into the temperaments? Like when did this become like a really a passion or desire for you to learn them and help others get to know them?
I first learned about them when I was about 16, which, by the way, as far as you feeling badly about not knowing them when you were parenting your younger ones, I think that God brings these gifts into our lives at the right time. Like it's not like it came into your life and you knew this was from God and you rejected it. It's not
Right.
like that. It's more that this was the time that God wanted to open this part of his wisdom to you.
Oh, thank you
The
for that.
wisdom of his plan in creating each of us with a particular temperament or a particular combination of temperaments. And so I first read about it when I was about 16. And I thought it was fascinating at the time, and I immediately could apply it to my parents and my siblings and realize, wow, that's why this sibling is so different, and that sibling is like that, you know. But it didn't go deeply enough because the books that were available way back then were very, very, I don't know, very shallow. Just kind of talk about it a little bit, bring a spiritual perspective to it, but in just like a couple of paragraphs. And now we have so much more. When I was in my early 20s, I found books that were from a Christian perspective that were very much deeper and really explained that God gives us each of these temperaments to help us in our mission in life so that we can bring these strengths to the table. Or I talk about like tools in your tool bag, that you have these tools that God gave you that maybe He didn't give your spouse or your sister or whoever else is around you because God wanted you to use these gifts for His glory and to lean into your strengths and work on your weaknesses. And that would literally be your path to heaven. And when I say you, I mean all of us. That literally He gives us these strengths as starter pack tools, right? And then he gives us these weaknesses so that we know what we have to work on, so that we feel humble and we feel our need to lean on him. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, yeah. And that just kind of led me to think of how, just to kind of continue with what you had just said, is I feel like, you know, and you do this in your book too, where you talk about the temperament, you talk about the different vices that can come along with that particular temperament, as well as the blessings and the gifts that they can be. But I think in the spiritual life, it's really learning about our temperaments can help us grow spiritually so much, because if we get to know what our tendencies are and just kind of our makeup and what we tend to lean towards, whether the vice or the virtue, I can see where it would just really help us in our spiritual life to tackle the vices that stump us up and keep us further away from God, if we can help to recognize more and understand, okay, well, I just tend to lean a little bit towards that direction and that vice. That's, you know, apparently that's just, you know, that's the way God made me, but now I know, and I can kind of balance that out with this virtue that I would be more, you know, gifted in with this particular temperament. So that's so beautiful how it's just really another layer of getting to know ourselves, and
Yes,
helping to just grow closer to God with that.
exactly. That's the whole point of it. You mentioned not being able to put yourself into one particular temperament. I'd like to emphasize that it's not about pigeonholing. It's not about saying, well, that person's choleric, they're always going to behave this way. And I'm sanguine, so I'm always going to behave this way. It's not that. It's just understanding where our tendencies lie and therefore how we come to any specific situation. And then understanding, okay, is this a virtue or is this a weakness in my temperament? Is
Mm-hmm.
this something that's good? It's good that I'm helping everyone to rejoice because I'm sanguine, or it's good that I'm being detail oriented because I'm melancholic? Or am I getting too nitpicky as a melancholic? Or am I talking and laughing too much as a sanguine and it's time to get serious? So at least you can recognize it. It's all about
Mm-hmm.
recognizing it and then showing it to God and saying, Lord, is this something that's pleasing to you? Or am I going too far one direction or the other?
Yeah, that's so helpful. So, how has this helped your life in your domestic church, your family? So, Living Lit is, you know, has a strong emphasis, and we just want to help families and people just live their domestic church life well. We want to give them resources, help them to live with their family in a way that glorifies God. How has learning more about the temperaments, and you've been blessed to know about them for, you know, for much of your life as a woman, then if you learned about it like when you were high school age, how has that helped you in your marriage and in your life as a mom?
Well, I'm certainly not perfect at it. Let me just say that. Just knowing all of it doesn't always mean that I apply it perfectly. Um, but it does help tremendously because I can. sometimes pull back a little bit in a situation and analyze, okay, is the reason that my husband and I are having a difference of opinion, is this because he's looking at it from a different temperamental perspective? And a lot of times it is, especially when we were first married. I'm very sanguine, he's very melancholic. And as I mentioned before, those are kind of opposed to each other. They both tend to go off their feelings a lot, whereas the choleric is more intellectual. The sanguines and the melancholics tend to go off of feelings a lot, but their feelings tend to go in two different directions. The sanguine tends to be more, it'll all work out. I can trust them. I just met them yesterday, but they'll be great. And the melancholic is more like, we don't know those people. We're not giving them money for their charity when we don't know. This is just a random example. I didn't have this particular difference of opinion, but it's that kind of a thing where the sanguine is very generous and very, oh, it'll all work out. And the melancholic is very, I don't know. I have to investigate this. I have to make a decision very carefully with a lot of thought. The sanguine will buy something, and the melancholic husband will say, "Well, did you check five other stores to make sure that that was the best price for that?" And the sanguine's like, "No, it was cute. I bought it." And the melancholic, so that's just an example of how
Yeah.
sanguines and melancholic spouses can be completely, and it can be either way. I'm saying a sanguine wife, but it could totally be the sanguine husband that goes out and buys a boat or a motorcycle or something, and the melancholic wife is like, I'm looking at the budget here, dear, and I don't see where this is fitting.
Yeah.
And then in our children as well, being able to look at my kids, and like you said earlier, we want to be fair, but that doesn't mean that we're going to parent them exactly equally. It doesn't mean that if one child forgets to start the dishwasher, I use this example a lot because that was something I struggled with as a kid. It was my job to start the dishwasher every night, and almost every night I forgot. I did not forget out of malice. I did not forget out of rebellion at all. I was very happy to start the dishwasher. It wasn't that big of a deal, but I would forget because I was sanguine. So if you have a sanguine child that is forgetting to do their chores versus a choleric child who's like, oh yeah, go ahead and make me, that's going to be a lot different in how you parent those two kids, even though they both forgot to do the chore. They forgot to mow the lawn or take out the trash or start the dishwasher. That's very, very different. Or the phlegmatic who's just so easygoing that they not only forget, but they're just like, I didn't even get off the sofa to walk through the kitchen to even think about it. So then you're going to be trying to motivate that phlegmatic child to say, okay, how can we, I have a good friend who has a phlegmatic child that's like this. How can we help you to remember? How can we know that there are things that we have to do in life and you're trying to instill that sense of duty in them? The choleric child has a strong sense of duty. And if you can inflame that, as I was able to somewhat do with my choleric child, to say, this is what's right. Getting to Sunday Mass every single Sunday is what's right. Living in the state of grace is what's right. The choleric will latch on to that and hold to that. They may still be bickering with their siblings or they may still have these other weaknesses, but they can latch on to that. This is my duty. This is a non-negotiable. Cholerics are very good at non-negotiables. This is what I'm going to do. The sanguine wants to be fun loving. So maybe you have to make it a little fun and say, I've said to my sanguine daughter, how about if we go to daily mass this week and then we go out for coffee afterwards? Okay, right? The sanguine is motivated by that. The phlegmatic is like, does that still mean I have to get off the sofa? So understanding which one they are so that you can, or which two they are, so that you can figure out how to motivate them and also where their bad behavior might be coming from. You might look at their bad behavior and say, okay, it's not an excuse. No pigeonholing, no excuses. It's not an excuse, it's just an understanding. This child struggles more with whatever, lying, stealing, whatever it is that you're trying to correct in your child. This one struggles more with that. Hmm, is it because they're choleric and they have to have control? Is it because they're sanguine and they just don't think it would be fun to admit that they took the last cookie? Like just figuring it out and then saying, okay, now that I know where it's coming from, I can help them to correct it and I can help them to counteract it. And again, we apply that same thing to ourselves and our own virtues and vices.
Yeah, that's also helpful. So, do you have a place that you recommend people go to, like, take a quiz or to find out? Because I know I'm just sitting here thinking, oh my goodness, I want all my kids to like take the something so I can figure out what they are, but also to help them understand. I think it would be a great opportunity to, especially for those of us who have kids that are old enough to understand and might, that this would be valuable for them, for them to maybe understand the temperaments and, you know, how God made them and created them so beautifully. But at the same time, where we're kind of learning, okay, they're a whatever, that's definitely going to help us in our family life and in our relationship together now and down the road. So, do you have a resource that you like to use for something that people can help take a quiz or figure out what they are, what their husband is, what their child is?
Yes, I do. I like the Personality Plus questionnaire that Florence Littauer, God rest her soul, came up with. And it's found in her book by that title, Personality Plus. But I have also found that you can just download the quiz online. If
Okay.
you look for Personality Plus quiz, Florence Littauer, up it comes. And the way hers is set up, she has 40 questions, and each question gives you 4 words. And then she asks you which of these 4 words describes you most often. And sometimes you'll look at the 4 words and say, I'm not any of those things. In which case you say, yes, but if at all, like, okay, once in my life, I was this one, whatever is the most often. And then others you'll look at and you'll be like, well, I'm kind of that and kind of that. Well, think about what you were when you were a child and what was your natural tendency. If you weren't trying to be virtuous, what's your natural tendency? And the first 20 are strengths and the second 20 are weaknesses. And I think she just does a really good job of allowing us to admit to our weaknesses because that can be hard. It
It
can be
can.
hard to say, yeah, shallow. I remember reading one temperament book that said that sanguines were hedonistic. And I put the book down. I don't like that style of writing. It's just such a terrible, but it was because they were taking what we could be, right? Sanguines can be very shallow and pleasure seeking, but they kind of took it to the nth degree, and I was like, I am not. So in Florence Littauer's questionnaire, she helps us to just take a gentle look at what our weaknesses may be. And I was helping a young man to do this questionnaire for the first time. And about halfway through, I said, you don't have to finish the rest of it. I know what you are. You're melancholic because you're overthinking every
Oh,
single
funny.
question. Of course, he finished it, and he was predominantly melancholic, but yeah, I find that one really helpful.
Okay, great. And we will connect that in the show notes. And then also, you have, so we are going to connect, obviously, your website and how people can reach you. But why don't we just right now also let people know how is the best way to reach you, Rosemary?
Yes, yes. So, of course, my book is available from Tan Books, and you can also order it into your Catholic bookstore. You can even ask for it at Barnes and Noble. It's available on barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, pretty much everywhere books are sold, you can order it. And then I have my own website, rosemarymcguireberry.com. And I encourage you to come there and subscribe to my mailing list there. I write weekly articles on Substack at rosemarymcguireberry.substack.com. And I post on Instagram about 3 times a week, usually about the saints and Catholic travel. And that my handle on Instagram is rosemary.writer. So my first thing I would suggest is to go to my website and sign up for my mailing list because then I send out a monthly roundup of all the things. Like, here's an article I wrote over here, here's an interview I did over here, and you can just kind of follow all of it in one email.
Mm-hmm.
So go to my website.
Awesome. And you do have some resources that people can check out and download that will help them in this journey of learning more about the temperaments, which is just so great. So, is there anything else, Rosemary, that you would like to let listeners know or just to touch on as far as the temperaments or the saints go? I just love that you had the idea to tie the saints into the temperaments. What a great idea. It's just beautiful. And I love how that just takes it a step further in our Catholic faith, especially to get to know the saints better or at a different way, like a different level of, oh, yeah, and, I can relate to them or I can see myself doing similar, tendencies that they did. And so now and it could even become, I could see where someone then could really develop a deeper relationship and connection with the saint that they are most like, and then could also invite that saint to intercede for them in just going through life and, making decisions and just all these things. I think that would be a great thing that someone could do too, is invite them to intercede for them.
Yes. Well, and you brought up a good point at the beginning that even if you don't know much about the saints, you can understand this book. But at the same time, if you're very knowledgeable in the saints, I bring a different point of view as far as helping you figure out what was their temperament, what was their natural tendency, and then how did they lean into the strengths and how did they overcome the weaknesses. So as you learn more about the saints, you may decide, like you said, that there's saints that you especially identify with because they had your same temperament, or you might look at some saints and say, I wish I was more like that saint. I wish I had more phlegmatic. Let me pray more to St. Joseph or St. Thomas Aquinas or St. Thomas More. Or I wish I had more choleric. Let me pray to St. Paul or St. Francis Xavier. So, like you said, I think the whole goal here is to get to know the saints and learn from their examples and pull out concrete applications for our daily lives so that we can grow closer to the heart of Christ. Every one of us is called to sanctity. Every one of us is called to union with Christ. This is not something for the big saints. This is not something for the Teresa of Avila's and the St. Paul's. This is for every single one of us. And God had a plan when he made us of how that path to heaven was going to lie. And now we just keep moving towards him by learning about the saints, by imitating the saints, by praying to the saints to help us along the way. Also, we can reach the heart of Christ.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you. Oh my goodness, that's so encouraging and inspiring. And I thank you, Rosemary, for all the work you have done with this book and just in your ministry in general of leading people closer to our Lord and helping them to understand their temperaments and themselves. So thank you so much for using the gifts that our Lord has given you. Thank you. So we will connect in the show notes, the quiz and all of the information that you need to find Rosemary and get in touch with her and take advantage of her wonderful resources. And then again, her book, Piety and Personality, is available through Tan Publishing, and I will connect a link for that too. And if you use Living Lit 15, you can use my special code for a discount. And then that helps Living Lit as well. So thank you so much, Rosemary. It's been a delight to visit with you. You've really planted some amazing seeds and really helped me to clarify some things and temperaments. And I'm just grateful. And my prayer is just that those who are listening and watching are just blessed by this as much, and that this will serve them in their own life, their relationship with the Lord, and in their family circles, their friend circles, their church circles, and beyond. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. You gave me chills. Thank you, Robyn.
Well,
God bless you.
It's all God. All right. Until next time, Living Lit friends and family, have a great day. Thanks for joining us today. Remember to like, subscribe, and share Living Lit, and reach out with topics you'd like tackled at livinglit@sfcatholic.org. And be the light, shine the light, share the light, and live lit.